What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we have got our Week 5 fantasy quarterback starts and sits for every single matchup. So make sure to tune in. And in the meantime, if you guys enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us, asking us questions as the week progresses. And check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Join our free newsletter to get some exclusive content and become a fantasy VIP to get personalized fantasy advice throughout the season from yours truly. All the details in the description, but for now, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdown, we want to give you guys a quick word from our sponsors at Overlay Fantasy Sports, who we've actually been using since the start of the NFL season, specifically their matchup shop function, which is absolutely awesome. And let's face it, betting on the same old Team A versus Team B game can get a little bit boring. Well, that's where the matchup shop function comes into play, as it allows you to bet on individual player matchups. All you have to do is put your bet in terms of who you think will have a higher fantasy performance. And it's incredibly simple as well. Just like a normal bet would work, you've got your different spreads, anywhere from Thursday night football to Sunday's games, or even Monday night football. You can have a number of different possibilities and choices. You will find a bet that you love, whether it's two running backs versus each other, two quarterbacks, two wide receivers. Honestly, it's all there. And if you guys want to even get a couple different bets going, Overlay Fantasy allows you to do that, as well as you can put single bets, but you can also get a couple of bets together on one matchup slip and get a big parlay going for a big time payout. And honestly, if the NFL isn't your thing, have no fear. Overlay Fantasy has got other options like golf, MLB, and the NBA. So make sure to check it out and have all that homework you're doing not only benefit your fantasy squad, but your wallet as well. Our first game of the week is the Bucks at the Chicago Bears on Thursday night. And when looking at the starts, I'll take a chance on Tom Brady. I realize that he's coming off a great week in week 4 versus the Chargers, but let's point out a couple things. The Bears have been great defending opposing wide receivers along with the running back position, and Brady will be without Chris Godwin again, also without O.J. Howard. This Bears defense is a good unit overall. And Mike Evans also a little bit banged up. Now, honestly, we're probably predicting a low-end quarterback 2 type of performance from Tom Brady overall. And to be honest, if things were a little bit different in terms of there being no bye weeks in week 5 and a couple games potentially being threatened by COVID, well, we might actually have Tom Brady as a potential sit, because his ceiling not nearly as high as it was last week. And speaking of sits, we definitely know that Nick Foles is a sit for us. Maybe the Bears offense is a little bit better with Foles under center in terms of him not making dumb mistakes, but it's not by much. We saw the same issues last week. This offense is still inconsistent. Nick Foles, Mitch Trubisky, whoever the quarterback is here, they are not game changers. They are game managers at best. So for that reason, we are passing on Nick Foles in week 5. Then we've got the Bills at the Titans, and speaking of one of the games that could be threatened, this is one of them, and it's unfortunate because Josh Allen is a locked and loaded top 5 fantasy quarterback on the weekend, by the looks of it, for the rest of the season. But that could be threatened here because COVID cases continue to pop up for the Tennessee Titans. And if that is the trend, don't be shocked if this game is delayed yet again or postponed, whatever the case might be. And if it is somehow played, then as far as our sits, we will sit Ryan Tannehill, because right now the pass catching situation is not looking good for the Titans. First and foremost, Corey Davis just placed on the COVID IR list. You have got Adam Humphries also not expected to play. A.J. Brown potentially might suit up, but this would be his first game back from injury. So usually wide receivers not as effective in those scenarios. You couple that with this being a run-first team and the Bills having a good defense, I am fading Ryan Tannehill if this game takes place. Then we've got the Jaguars at the Texans. Nothing too sexy here. Gardner Minshew will start him. The Texans defense doesn't scare us all that much. We saw finally that big game from DJ Shark last week that kind of allowed us to see a nice upside from Gardner Minshew as well. Laviska Shenault continues to take next steps as a rookie. Nice to see. And then Deshaun Watson obviously has the higher ceiling. We'll see if the head coaching change does anything to spark this Texans team. But either way, the Jaguars are a good matchup. We just saw the Bengals put up a bunch of points on the Jaguars. I think the Texans can do the same, and Deshaun Watson will be one of the main reasons why. From there, we've got the Bengals at the Ravens. And tentatively, I've got Joe Burrow as a start. He falls in a similar category to me as would Tom Brady in terms of him being a low-end quarterback too. And if we didn't have those buys and those COVID concerns, I would probably be sitting him. Yes, the Bengals have a lot of weapons, but this Ravens team defensively, I think, will cause issues for Burrow. This isn't as easy of a matchup as were the Jaguars, so keep that in mind. Right now, we've got him primarily as a start because of the volume that we expect for him to throw. So for that reason, there should be some opportunities, probably between 15 to 20 points for him on the week. And then Lamar Jackson, if he plays, he popped up on the injury report, but we don't expect it to be serious. Right now, we're thinking he plays. If he does, he should have a great outing versus the Bengals. Defensively, they're not all that scary. He should be in line for a top 5 fantasy performance. Then we've got the Panthers at the Falcons. Pretty easy here. This is an NFC South showdown, and historically, these are very high-scoring affairs. And with the Falcons' defense being as beat up as it is right now, Teddy Bridgewater, you have to start him, I feel like. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson proving to be capable wide receivers. Mike Davis filling in all right, while Christian McCaffrey is nursing that ankle injury. So I like the upside for Teddy Bridgewater, and honestly, I might even like it more so than Matt Ryan. I think both these guys have top 10 potential for the week because neither defense is all that intimidating. For Matt Ryan, the question will be, what will the health of his wide receivers be? Ridley, Julio Jones. Those are the names that we have to monitor. If one of those guys does miss the game, obviously his upside will also go down a little bit. From here, we've got the Raiders at the Chiefs, and I'll actually start Derek Carr, who quietly, even while he's been hurting at the wide receiver position, has been, over 300 yards last week, a couple touchdowns, and really hasn't struggled with interceptions, which has been nice to see. I believe the Raiders will have to throw the football here a lot to keep pace with the Chiefs. So I like the upside of Derek Carr. I think he could be a mid to high end quarterback 2 on the week. And then obviously Patrick Mahomes, we are going to start him. Top 5 quarterback, regardless of the matchup every single week. You love the offense. You're starting him here versus the Raiders. From here, we've got the Cardinals at the Jets, and Kyler Murray is someone we will start. We say this every single week when we talk about quarterbacks facing the Jets, and the weapons are there for the Cardinals. Yes, they've been unlucky these last few weeks in terms of getting wins, but I think this is where they finally put it together, and as far as fantasy purposes are concerned, Kyler Murray should have a relatively big game, top 10 type of upside this week. And then you see a new name here, Joe Flacco for the Jets, because the Jets announced that Sam Darnold will not be starting. So that means Flacco time at least for week 5, but I am sitting him here. His first game in a long time. How much chemistry does he have with this offensive group, and how healthy is this offensive group? I know the Cardinals defense isn't all that intimidating, but I do think there will be a lot of rust here, so I am fading Joe Flacco. Moving on, we've got the Eagles at the Steelers. I'm only interested in starting Ben Roethlisberger here. That unprecedented bye last week due to the COVID outbreak between the Steelers and the Titans means that there were a couple offensive weapons that were allowed to get a little bit healthier, primarily Deontay Johnson, who had his concussion protocol cleared, and that's a big plus for Ben Roethlisberger because Deontay Johnson has been a big weapon for the Steelers, and I do think that Roethlisberger here has a decent matchup versus this Eagles secondary, so I would start him as a mid-level quarterback too. However, Carson Wentz, I am fading him right now. Just every single wide receiver injured for the Eagles. Didn't really do anything all that great last week versus the 49ers. And now it's an arguably even tougher matchup versus this great Steelers defense. So I am fading Carson Wentz. Then we've got the Rams at Washington. And you might be surprised, but I'm starting both these quarterbacks. I'm starting Jared Goff. The weapons are there for the Rams. I think Jared Goff right now, on a week-to-week basis, he's playing like a high-end quarterback too. So again, I'll take a chance on him. And as far as Washington, you don't see Dwayne Haskins anymore, and we've been saying it for a while. Don't be surprised if he is benched. We said that before the season started, and it took until week 5, but it's finally here. Kyle Allen is starting, and I'll take a chance on him. Again, if we had a situation where there were no buys, where there were no concerns about COVID and games being postponed, probably wouldn't start Kyle Allen, but this is Ron Rivera's guy. I think that Kyle Allen has much bigger upside than a Dwayne Haskins, and even last year when the Panthers were losing, Kyle Allen still had some big fantasy games. I think he adds a dimension to this offense where he can air it out much better than Dwayne Haskins. Yes, he could be a liability in terms of turnovers, but I don't mind the matchup here. Low end to mid-level quarterback 2 on the week. Then we've got the Dolphins at the 49ers. Tentatively, we would start Jimmy Garoppolo. Obviously, that depends on will he play. And if he does, I don't mind starting him versus this Dolphins defense. If he doesn't, well, I have zero interest in trying to guess who it will be for the 49ers, whether it's Mullins, whether it's Beathard. So for that reason, unless it's Jimmy Garoppolo, I am fading quarterbacks in this matchup as a whole. Yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick included for the Dolphins. A lot of talks about potentially Tua getting the start here, but no, it will be Fitzpatrick. And if last week was any indication, this 49ers defense still has some life left in it. It limited Carson Wentz. I think he can do something similar to Ryan Fitzpatrick. I could see this game being a little bit lower scoring than some people might anticipate. Then we've got the Giants at the Cowboys, and honestly, I'll start both these quarterbacks. Yes, I know Daniel Jones has struggled immensely these last few weeks, but right now, what looks like to be a cure-all for that is playing this Cowboys defense, which just gave up 40-plus points versus the Cleveland Browns. So for that reason, I'll fire up Daniel Jones. Now, make no mistake about it, Dak Prescott has the much higher ceiling. He's got the better weapons. He's got the better overall offense. And again, the Giants defense, not all that great either. So he's obviously the much higher rated quarterback here, arguably a top 5 quarterback for week 5. Then we've got the Broncos at the Patriots, and I'm sitting both quarterbacks here, Brett Rippon and Jarrett Stidham, assuming that these are the starters. Maybe there's an outside chance that Drew Lock returns, but even if he does, I still think that there's going to be some rust there, and this Patriots defense showed that it could slow down Patrick Mahomes to an extent. So I think that they could definitely do that to whoever starts for quarterback for Denver. And then for the Patriots, I'm anticipating that the starter will be Jarrett Stidham, after he was inserted in that game versus the Kansas City Chiefs late with Hoyer struggling and getting benched. There's an outside chance that Cam Newton could start, but that would have to mean that there's multiple COVID tests passed without any issues. The possibilities of that are very low. If he somehow does play, then I would start him, but other than that, I'm sitting every single quarterback in this matchup. From here, we've got the Colts at the Browns, and again, a matchup that I don't necessarily like for fantasy purposes and the quarterbacks involved. I'm sitting Phillip Rivers. Right now, for the Colts, these offensive pass catchers just aren't getting the job done, and I'm not seeing the same type of upside from Rivers like we've seen in years past. The Colts want to focus on rushing the football right now, limiting the mistakes that Rivers commits, so I'm sitting him. And then I'm also sitting Baker Mayfield because this isn't as easy of a matchup as it was for the Browns last week versus the Cowboys defensively. And again, the Browns, even with an injured Nick Chubb, they've got great depth in a Kareem Hunt. I don't think that their rushing attack will really skip a beat. And Baker Mayfield, even last week, a lot of those points were courtesy of some trick plays. So Baker Mayfield didn't have as great of an outing as maybe that final score would indicate. I'm sitting him here. This Colts defense, it's better than that of the Dallas Cowboys unit. So for that reason, we're sitting both of these guys. Then we've got the Vikings at the Seahawks, and I am firing up both of these quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins, He's got the weapons with Thielen, Justin Jefferson, 2 straight 100-plus yard games in a row. Dalvin Cook is still there. And the Seattle Seahawks defense doesn't really scare us all that much, so I'll take a chance on Kirk Cousins. I think he's got high-end quarterback 2 upside, and then obviously we're starting Russell Wilson. You know, you can make the case that he finally had his first off week for this season, but even with that being said, it was still a relatively good performance for Russell Wilson. And right now, facing the Vikings defense, again, it doesn't scare me. The secondary is absolutely beatable, as is pretty much the entire unit group. So for that reason, I am fully confidently starting Russell Wilson, who again has top 5 quarterback upside on the week. Then we go to the Chargers at the Saints, our final game of the week. I'm starting Drew Brees here, pretty much the only quarterback that I feel confident starting in. If Michael Thomas returns, definitely feel much better about this, because that offense for the Saints is much better when he is involved. That goes without saying, and we just saw Tom Brady have his way with this Chargers defense. I think Drew Brees can do something similar. And as far as our sits, you see Tyrod Taylor here. Now, the quarterback starting for the Chargers maybe a little bit up in the air. There's some reports that Tyrod Taylor could be back, and if he is, Anthony Lynn, by all accounts, has been saying that Taylor will be given a chance to retain his job. Unfortunately so, because this offense looks much better with Justin Herbert, especially for fantasy purposes. But if Taylor does start here, I want nothing to do with him. He looked absolutely atrocious in week 1 when he played. And I just don't like the upside there. If Justin Herbert does play, then I would take a flyer on him as a low-end quarterback too, however. So with that, we wrap up this week 5 quarterback start and sit breakdown. And as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with your own start and sit questions? We will do our best to answer them. And if you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, and give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us, asking us questions on there as well. And check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Join our free newsletter for some free exclusive content. All the details in the description. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.